30% of the chemicals that we can, accessible in the Kenyan market, they've been banned elsewhere, especially in the countries where they are manufactured. In Kenya, they are readily available in the agrovet nearest to you, and our farmers continue using them without knowledge of their grievous health effect. So the basic question that should be running in our minds, why is something so harmful for the US and UK citizens, but it is safe for the Kenyan citizens? The proponent of these pesticides have always argued that without these pesticides, we as a country cannot be able to be food secure. And sometimes it is an understatement of the fact that our agricultural system has sustained generations before us for thousands of years. Yeah. Because food security is not just about enough food.
Yes.
It is also about safe food. What I can tell Kenyan consumers without fear of contradiction is that our food is not of acceptable quality as envisioned by the Constitution. If you were to buy the mangoes in our market today, for instance, and pretend you want to export them in UK, before leaving the UK, they'll screen them and say they are not of acceptable quality. They cannot allow them to be exported.
Hey guys, welcome to today's episode of LNN. My name is Lynn Ngugi, and as always, we get to meet and do what we are doing this year. We get to learn and relearn. And the conversation today, it touches on all aspects of our lives, because when they say that some of the pesticides we have, especially majority of the ones we have here in Kenya, have been banned from other countries, one of the questions that you get to ask is, why are these pesticides here? Whose interest do they serve? And also, at the end of the day, what are some of the things that are going to happen to us if we continue consuming food that is full of these pesticides? My guest today, you saw him in our previous episode together, where he was able to break down for us and make us understand what exactly is Batuk still doing in Kenya and whose interest do they serve. And guys, I want us to start asking ourselves some really important questions, because when you see banned pesticides in your country, you really have to dig deeper and ask, why are these pesticides here? Some people have said there's a whole depopulation agenda when it comes to these things, but our guest, as I said, will be able to connect the dots for us from A to Z. I'm about to let him introduce himself again so that we can be able to break down this conversation. But before that, kindly allow me to say thank you so much to our amazing partners of today's episode, that is Kings Developers Limited. And we have said it's been almost 3 years now working with Kings, and I've said if you're looking into owning a home with a reputable real estate company, why don't you try them? They have apartments across the country and their budget varies. They have upper end, medium range, and also cost effective or cost friendly houses for you. So check them out or visit their magnificent building at Prism Towers and also give me feedback. And if owning an apartment is not for you right now and you want to own a piece of land where maybe unataka kujenga commercial activities, etc., why don't you check out our partners at Golden Dreams Land and Properties Limited? They have land across the country, and one of the things I loved about them is that they are able to take you where ujione. They say their title deed is their DNA, and I've been to those properties. Personally, I have done my due diligence, but I know land is very sensitive. I would want you to also do your own due diligence, but they have great properties for you, and also their contact details are on the screen. If you want Malindi, Makutano, Masinga, Matu, Wewe, Amua, the contact details are on your screen, and talk to them about their flexible payment plan. Yeah, that is Muga Kikohoa hapo nyuma, but allow me also to welcome the new subscribers on the platform. I appreciate you. I see our brothers from South Africa. I see you guys from the UK. I see you from Namibia, Zambia. Karibuni sana, and thank you so much for getting us to over 1 million subscribers. That is not something I take for granted. And now, of course, without further ado, please allow me to let my guest today introduce himself so that he can be able to walk us through this conversation. Sir, good morning.
Good morning.
How are you?
I'm pretty much fine.
You're good?
I'm good.
Looking sharp?
Thank you.
Yes. Nice to see you again.
I really appreciate it.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Lynn, and thank you to Lynn LNN family. It's always a pleasure to be invited here once more, and I'm very much happy to be engaging with you, especially on this topic.
Yeah, last time we had a very thought-provoking conversation, and for the very first time, someone was able to connect to us the dots between from what Batuk are doing here, the conservancies and whose interests they are serving, and some of the injustices that are happening in Laikipia. But today we get to talk about another sensitive conversation. This is food security, the pesticides, etc., etc. But if anyone missed out on our first episode, maybe looking at that camera, would you introduce yourself and remind them what you do?
Once again, thank you so much, Lynn, and to our listeners, my name is Kelvin Kubai. I'm an advocate of the High Court of Kenya. I specialize much more on human rights litigation and environmental class actions. Previously, we've dealt with a topic on conservation and the British Army training activities in Laikipia. But today we are even in a more interesting topic that touches each one of us individually and collectively, and it's very much I'm very much happy to even be sharing about it.
Okay. Why is this conversation important to you? Because I've noticed this is something that you are doing so passionately. What's your why when it comes to this?
I think, to be honest, this happens to be my single most patriotic duty to my country, because it's something that touches each one of us. And I would want to work with our listeners how food that from the soil that comes to your plate.
Yes.
It's a journey that begins with a seed, and then from this seed, it ends up in your dinner table. And these, you may not even know, or in the evening when you're having dinner, for instance, assuming today you had rice and beans and sukuma wiki for dinner. The sukuma wiki might be coming from somewhere in Kinangop. The tomatoes that was used in preparing the stew might be coming from somewhere, let's say, in Endarasha.
Yes.
The onions could be coming from somewhere in Nyeri. The peas may be, or dengu might be coming from somewhere in Ukambani. The rice might be coming from Mwea. So what comes to your dinner table individually has gone through a journey and a series that you as the consumer might not even have a full view of it. You have no idea where these tomatoes were prepared, the ingredients that were used, the seeds that were used. And now you're speaking in an era of proliferation of GMOs. So you may not even be able to know whether some of, or a certain percentage of the food in your dinner consists of GMOs. And I say so because especially in Africa, 60% of our population are into farming, and farming remains, and agriculture remains to be the single most largest employer of the Kenyan population. So most of the people, mashinani in the villages engaging in these farming activities, we've really let them down as a country. I mean, we've not been able to guide them such that when they prepare this seed, that will at the end of the day land in your dinner table. Have they prepared it, in a safety or in a safe way, so that what lands in your dinner table is safe and secure.
Okay,
yeah.
Great. And I know we have a shocker here, because when I was having this conversation with you before, when we were preparing for this episode, you gave me a percentage and I was like, wait a minute, what are you saying? Drop it for us. Give us that shock already. Shock us.
Over 30% of the chemicals that we can, accessible in the Kenyan market, they've been banned elsewhere, especially in the countries where they are manufactured. So we have countries we have companies in the UK, companies in the US and China. We have Syngenta, we have Monsanto, we have Bayer manufacturing these chemicals and pesticides. They do not sell them within their areas of manufacture, but they export them to developing countries like Kenya, who import them, and they are readily available in our market. And our farmers, even the most shocking thing is, they do not know the scientific reasons behind the reason why these chemicals have been banned. And there are a lot of them. In 2022, we did move to court. We filed a very substantive petition on very weighty issues, on a number of these pesticides and molecules, about 8 of them. Just to name a few, we've glyphosate, we've paraquat, we've malathion, we've chlorophylls, we've phyllorodhium. And all these, they are groundbreaking or let's say weighty scientific reasons as to why they are not allowed in the areas of manufacture. But then they're imported in Kenya. They are readily available in the agrovet nearest to you, and our farmers continue using them without knowledge of their grievous health effect, and not just to the farmers, but even to the consumers who happen to be at the receiving end of the end product of the agricultural chain.
Let's go through some of these again. You said
glyphosate.
Glyphosate, very famous.
It's the most famous of it all. Glyphosate the glyphosate is in a number of chemicals. To begin with, the most famous one is Roundup. And Roundup elsewhere, especially in the US, it's been found to cause non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. Non-Hodgkin's lymphoma usually affect the lymph nodes. So when you've a farmer, especially in the use of this glyphosate, and it has so many ways of getting into your skin. Glyphosate can get to the human body through the skin, it can get through the eyes, it can get through the nose while you breathe. So it happens to be the most common one. And farmers use it because they don't want to till the land. So once you spray Roundup, for instance, it dries up everything.
That is the one that will be used to dry the grass and whatever.
Correct.
Mwagia Roundup.
Correct. Correct. It has substituted even tilling. And there is a correlation between glyphosate or these, especially they are known as non-selective herbicides. So they kill everything by, it dries up. So there is a correlation between glyphosate or these non-selective herbicides and GMO seeds. Because GMO seeds are tailored such that they are not affected by these non-selective herbicides. So if you're spraying like glyphosate, it can burn anything else but leave the GMO seed, because now the GMO has been tailored such that it is not affected by the active ingredient, this glyphosate. So you've continued, and the funny thing is the companies that produce these GMO seeds, again, the same company is producing this glyphosate. So throughout the supply chain of these chemicals, they happen to have continued the market, because they'll supply the farmer with GMO seeds, and then they supply him again with these herbicides. They disregard a number of violations. In 1996, Monsanto, which has now been bought by the German company Bayer, they were warned about misrepresenting glyphosate, because they always advertised glyphosate saying glyphosate will not harm anything. In fact, it's so safe than your daily consumable product. They're only saying that glyphosate can only harm the weeds and not the human and not human beings. And so there was litigations across US, and they found that the Monsanto company was misrepresenting about glyphosate. They were not disclosing the effect of this chemical to the people, and it was false and a misleading allegation to say that glyphosate will not harm anything else apart from human beings. So many times when I filed this petition that I did allude on earlier before, most of the companies we sued are the companies manufacturing these active ingredient. We sued the Agrochemical Association of Kenya as an umbrella body through which all these companies are registered under. We did sue also the PCPB, and we did sue also the Ministry of Agriculture. We did also bring on board the county government because of the devolution of agriculture, and we also did sue the Ministry of Health. I was happy the other day when our new Minister for Health, CS, the new CS for Health, Aden Duale, in his post on X, he did say that health is wealth. And so if health is a wealth, our health is directly related to what we eat, because we are what we eat. Various philosophers have said that you are as healthy as your gut. So how as a country do we determine the health of what we eat? How are we to ensure that what comes to our dinner table is safe. If you walk to our market here and buy tomatoes,
Yes.
how assured are we that these tomatoes are safe? When we speak about these misrepresentation of these chemicals, by these companies, they can afford a lot of publicity, they can afford a lot of PR. In fact, they advertise even in local languages.
Yes, yes.
You will hear them in Kameme, you will hear them in Shamgia FM, advertising these chemicals so that the farmer at the grassroots level can be able to understand that. As I was coming to this show, I was wondering, Lynn, when you come to the human drugs,
Yes.
I do not find them being advertised. I do not find them saying that we've come up with this new drug, it is this effective, save for Maramoja and aspirin.
Yes.
And even at the end of advertising Maramoja, the advertiser will add up and say, maumivu yakizidi, muone daktari. So they always advise you that this is not the end of it.
Yes.
But when you come to the advertisement of these chemicals, these advertisements do not disclose to the Kenyan farmers and consumers the effect of these chemicals. They do not disclose to them, even in other jurisdictions, these chemicals have been banned, such that now when the farmer is going to purchase these chemicals from the agrovet, he is buying them with the knowledge that I am buying them at my own risk, and if I'm buying them, I'm supposed to do this and this. And
Yes.
Allow me to juxtapose
Go on.
the human drugs and these agrochemicals, because they both serve, one serves the botany part of it, and the other one serves the human lives. So anytime you're walking to a chemist to buy a drug, you ought to have a prescription from a doctor.
Yes.
In fact, very many professional pharmacists will always ask you whether a doctor has referred you to them. And if you say no, they'll tell you, this drug, we cannot sell it to you without a prescription of a doctor. But now, walk in an agrovet in any town in this country, even in the villages, and you want to buy glyphosate, Roundup, the agrovet will not even question you whether an agronomist has referred you to the agrovet.
Actually, most of the times, the children are the ones who are sent. Enda unilete paraquat.
You're very right.
Unilete round, yeah.
And myself, I'm a victim. I've
Yes.
bought it so many times, countless times. My parents send me, go to the market, buy us these pesticides, and I go and buy them. And I walk home with them, and even when you're sending a child, even though the agrovet wanted to enlighten you on some of this, they cannot be able to pass this information to a child. A child may not even have the capacity to understand.
Yes.
And most of our farmers, we have to understand them. Most of our farmers are semi-illiterate, illiterate. So the basic question that should be running in our minds, why is something so harmful for the US and UK citizens, but it is safe for the Kenyan citizens? Like in America, they have these improved agriculture. Most of their farming is mechanized. So you'll find even the interaction between the farmers and these chemicals is very minimal, because most of the time it's machines. If it is spraying, they're using machines. Then they can also afford these gears for being able to do this work. But the conditions in Kenya, if we were to say, because most of the time when PCPB has made responses to our petition in court, they've always said that the conditions in America and UK are very different.
Yes.
So they're saying they're allowing them here because the conditions in Kenya can allow this.
Oh, really?
And I still wonder, in fact, it is very much ironic, because if anything, it means the conditions in Kenya, we should have even more stringent measures. Because in US and UK, we've farmers who have advanced agricultural input, with farmers who can afford the necessary implements that are needed or necessary to using these chemicals. But look at our daily farms. Look at our farmers in Mwea. Look at our farmers in Ahero. Look at our farmers in the Rift Valley, in Kitale, Trans Nzoia. Look at our farmers in Meru, in Nyeri, in Murang'a, and elsewhere, even in the coast region. When it comes to spraying, they use the usual knapsack. Sometimes these knapsacks are leaking. Some of them have been inherited. Some of them are shared between neighbors. You'll find someone asking you, please lend me your knapsack.
Yes.
He doesn't even know what you had sprayed with his knapsack. So I might have used glyphosate. Then my neighbor borrows me the knapsack. So he's going to spray now to his cabbages.
Yes.
And now he's going to, you want to spray, let's say, You want to spray, let's say, bestox, which is used to to curtail cutworms.
Okay.
So I had used my farm. I had used glyphosate. He comes, he borrows the knapsack. You want to use bestox, and there are some substrate that remained after I used my knapsack earlier on. So you find all these substrate and residues will, at the end of the day, flow to these cabbages and these sukuma wiki, which now Lynn here in Nairobi, in the evening when she's going home, she'll walk by the market, buy some sukuma wiki, buy some tomatoes. And when she buys them, then she ends up poisoning her family, not knowingly, unknowingly poisoning our families. And our farmers, I try to understand them. They're doing this because they do not have the information which is relevant for them to be able to make well-informed decisions and to prepare safe food for the Kenyan people. So as a country, and I think the main reason actually why our healthcare and our insurance cover for the healthcare remains at the deathbed is because we should be healthy right from what we eat. So we should not be burdening our hospitals and our healthcare insurance cover if our government and our people were very keen into protecting the safety of the food that lands the Kenyan table. I think as a country, we will be so much healthy, and we will not, because most of the time you find most of the patients who rely on these insurance covers are people who've acquired these diseases in the course of their practices or their daily lives, especially the farmers. Go to KNH, to Kenyatta National Hospital. You'll find most of these farmers with these cancers and so many other diseases. For some time in their life, they've been farmers. They've been actively interacting with these chemicals unknowingly. And after 20, 30 years down the line, they now start, these active ingredients, which are very cancerous. They now activate, and these farmers now have again now to rely on the state. So we are burdening, or rather we are burdening our healthcare because of being negligent as to what comes to our dinner table. We've allowed proliferation of so many highly hazardous pesticides into our market. So back to glyphosate.
Yes.
Glyphosate, as we said, has a Roundup, which is mostly used to dry, and then the farmers will not till, and then they plant. In the US, there are a number of cases which have been decided on glyphosate. One of them, even recently, last week on Friday, there was a case of John Barnes. John Barnes was awarded $2 billion in both punitive damages and compensation because he did acquire cancer, non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, from the use of glyphosate. And in Kenya, it's just that we do not have, or our farmers do not even know, that some of these diseases are as a result of the use of these chemicals. But there are so many. In the US currently, there are 1,777,000 similar cases to the case of John Barnes, because the farmers have started to know, and they can now, the chain of causation, they're able to know that my use of this chemical is what has led to my situation, and they move to court. And Monsanto understands that. In fact, they have set aside $12 billion for compensating.
What? They've said what?
They've set aside $12 billion to compensate people who will come with claims of saying that my use of glyphosate has led me to acquire, or has led me to have these and these kind of disease and sickness.
Is that public knowledge?
It's public knowledge.
It's in their website?
It's in their website.
What have they said?
They have set aside $12 billion for compensation, for being able to compensate such kind of cases. So they are aware. They are aware that these chemicals that they produce have an effect on the human health. So I do not know, and I really don't understand, why in Kenya, 60 years after independence, I do not know why we still continue to allow some of these chemicals into our market, while it has been found elsewhere that people are suffering as a result of the use of these chemicals. In any case, when you look at the risk-benefit analysis, at the end of the day, we are losers. The proponent of these pesticides have always argued that without these pesticides, we as a country cannot be able to be food secure. And sometimes it is an understatement of the fact that our agricultural system has sustained generations before us for thousands of years.
There you go.
I mean, we did not start farming here in Kenya and Africa at large just the other day. We've been farming. We've been eating from the soil. The basic truth and the basic principle is that we all eat from the soil. So our generations before us were still eating from the soil. They were still planting. They did not have this glyphosate. And they continued to farm without it. So I cannot believe that without most of these highly hazardous pesticides, our agriculture, in any case, will be more food secure. Because food security is not just about enough food.
Yes.
It is also about safe food. Because you may have enough food.
Food security
Yes.
is not just about enough food. It's
Yes.
also about safe food.
It's about safe food. Because no matter the quantity of the food you have, if that food is not safe, you cannot say you're food secure.
Yes.
Because that food is poison. No, in science they say poison. Everything is poisonous.
Yes.
It only depends with the level or the quantity. So the quantity of food you may have may actually be what's poisoning you. So as a country, we have our healthcare, collapsing now and then because we are not protecting the Kenyan consumers. We are poisoning the Kenyan consumers. And at the end of poisoning them, they'll now go to seek for healthcare and medical cover. But in the first place, they would not have been there if we really made them food secure, if we really secured their food. And it begins with, as we say, the journey of what comes to your dinner table begins with a seed. A farmer walks, buys a seed, he tenders this seed, and this seed, the beauty of capitalism is this seed will finally come to your nearest market where you'll buy it and prepare it for your family. So we have to prepare our farmers. And there are so many ways of doing this. And I always say, Lynn, that I love our constitution. It is the most beautiful thing that has ever happened to this country, whether by accident or design. It is the most beautiful thing that we had, that we really did ourselves as a country. When you look at provisions of our constitution, Article 43 on socioeconomic right, and you also look at Article 46 on consumer protection. So Article 43 provides that our government has a duty to ensure, especially on food, that everyone has food of, enough food, that is on the quantity, but then goes an extra mile to say that this food should be of acceptable quality. The constitutional word is acceptable quality. What I can tell Kenyan consumers without fear of contradiction is that our food is not of acceptable quality as envisioned by the constitution. I know it's painful, but it's the truth. If you were to buy the mangoes in our market today, if you were to buy the onions in our market today, any market, you walk to the market anywhere in this country and take those tomatoes, for instance, and pretend you want to export them in UK. Even at the entrance, even before zipita JKIA, before leaving the JKIA, they'll screen them and say they are not of acceptable quality. They cannot allow them to be exported. At around 2013, the UK banned Kenyan export in horticulture because of the use of these pesticides. The irony of it, it's them who export these chemicals to us. So our farmers in Timau who plant French beans, our farmers in Naivasha who plant this horticultural product, they lost the lucrative UK export market for horticulture on grounds that Kenyan export, especially horticulture, is laced with a lot of these ingredients of these pesticides. Some of them I've mentioned them here. And so they cannot allow them into their country because they're not of acceptable quality.
But your country is the manufacturer of these chemicals.
Correct.
So also as UK, why do you let this production continue if you know it's going to cause harm? Why are you exporting this product to other countries if you know it's going to cause harm?
This is the irony of it, because the irony of the free market is they pretend that these chemicals are very essential for these developing countries. Without them, they cannot be able to produce food. So they'll allow the export of these crops. But I've seen the European Parliament, they've done a research on the export of these highly hazardous pesticides to developing countries. And in recommendation 5 and 6 of this report, they've said that they should ban the export of these highly hazardous pesticides to their market. So what you find here, Lynn, you've brought out a very, I think we can clearly see this discrimination. It's very evident. It's screaming discrimination, because the UK farmer or the UK consumer, if he or she walks to a market in Tesco or Salisbury and buys some vegetables or onion, that consumer is assured that those vegetables is bought have been screened.
Yes.
They do not have any of these substrates that are highly hazardous. So when they take them and prepare for the family, they are assured that what they're preparing for the family is of acceptable quality. But look at the Kenyan consumer. If I walk today to Kawangware, I walk today to Village Market and buy the same tomatoes and sukuma wiki and prepare them, they are not of acceptable quality. In fact, if you went to them to a lab and tested them, you'll be shocked at the level of substrate that these chemicals have. And that is why I say, if these chemicals have been banned on grounds of serious scientific evidence in the UK and US, in Kenya we should even have more stringent measures. We should have more stringent measures, because look at the conditions of our farmers, Lynn. How many of them have access to this information? How many of them even know that some of these pesticides, when you spray them, there is a period, an incubation period within which you should not harvest them? So one of the most used pesticides, for instance, maradhion, you'll find they spray these mostly on vegetables and onions. So a farmer will spray today, then tomorrow someone passes by and says they want to buy onions and vegetables. And the farmer sells. It does not even disclose to this person that I sprayed them yesterday. In any case, the farmer doesn't know that for a certain period of time I should not do this. So he sells them. And they land to our market today. And then the advertisement, you know, these farmers, these advertisements, they even scare them. And that now brings me to Article 46 on consumer protection. And this is why I would really use this platform, Lynn, to invite members of parliament to even make very serious statute on when it comes to that advertisement of these pesticides. Sometimes I've seen members of parliament bring ridiculous bills, like Mang bill, Dengue bill. So instead of a Dengue bill, we would really need a bill that is tailored on the advertisement, especially of these agrochemicals, such that our gullible farmers here do not fall susceptible to these chemicals, because these advertisements will always feature on the positive effect of these chemicals. They'll not disclose the effect of these chemicals on their after effect. And so let us look at the conditions of the Kenyan farmers. First of all, let's say, for instance, to spray Evisect. Evisect is one of the most commonly used chemicals for the control of aphids. Evisect, I think 50 grams will cost 500 shillings. But to spray Evisect, you will need 5,000 shillings for that gear. You'll need gumboots, which will go for 1,000 shillings. You'll need gloves. You'll need a mask. You'll need the face mask. You will need even an helmet, and you'll need an overall. So how many farmers in Kenya will buy the full gear for them to be able to spray these Evisect? Or let us use Roundup, for instance. A liter of Roundup will go for 1,500 shillings. But to spray Roundup safely, you will need a kit that is not less than Kenya shillings 5,000. And in the villages, most of these farmers cannot afford to buy these whole implement. And that's where you find, especially in the US, when these cases are brought up against these companies, they always want to blame the victim. They'll always say, it is you who sprayed glyphosate without the relevant gear. But let us look at the conditions of the Kenyan farmer. Let us look the vulnerable conditions of our farmers. We cannot run away from the fact that this is what our farmers can comfortably afford. You find the most worn-out clothes. If you have an old jacket, that is what you use as an overall. If you have some torn shoes, that is what you use as gumboot. The face masks, most of us saw them during COVID. We never knew that. Otherwise, we only saw them in hospitals. So farmers, you'll not find them using these masks.
Yeah.
When it comes to helmet, again, they do not have. So we are very vulnerable farmers, and these are the people preparing our everyday meal. We cannot, as a country, let them down. We cannot let them provide this food at the cost of their own health, and at the same time unknowingly poisoning us. Because we have to walk a journey with these farmers. We have to protect them, and this now comes even to the county government. You know, the National Assembly has a duty here, as envisioned by Article 46, to ensure that they do put in place measures and mechanisms to ensure, as provided by Article 46, that advertisement is honest. I don't know why the Constitution chose to use such a word, which is not, honesty is not very much time a legal word.
Yes.
You know, so many times lawyers, we've been blamed for being dishonest. So when you speak of honesty as a constitutional word, it's not about ethics and morals. Honesty is associated with ethics and morals. But here it is used in constitution as a constitutional term. So being honest in your advertisement means that you disclose to the Kenyan farmers and consumers about the active ingredient of these chemicals. You disclose to them the health effect that could be associated with the use of these chemicals. You disclose to them even these past, you know, in other jurisdictions, these chemicals have been banned, such that now the Kenyan farmer and Kenyan consumer has the relevant knowledge to make an informed decision whether or not they can buy these ingredients.
So
yeah.
So where are the the Bureau of Standards in all this? Because I'm assuming for a product to be imported in the country, then they also need to look at it.
Yeah.
So what role are they playing in all this failure?
Most of your listeners, Lynn, I think, may remember there was a time Moses Kuria, when he was the CS for trade, and there was a proliferation of this cooking oil that was said to be poisonous.
Yes.
And he told the Kenyan farmers, in Kenya, you are a candidate of death. You can die through so many ways. And he said that, especially Kebs, they trust the manufacturer. So when you look at the PCPB, which is supposed, PCPB is the pest control, pesticides control, pest control and product board is the one that regulates the use of these pesticides and agrochemicals, including licensing them. So when you look at the level of PCPB, including its capacity, does PCPB have the capacity to even test these chemicals, their individual substrates, and the conditions of the Kenyan market and Kenyan users? Because again, most of the time PCPB has no capacity. In fact, so many times they've said they need to have more capacity. I've seen very many press statements where they're saying that they do not even have enough human capacity, even at our various borders, because some of these pesticides will come even from Uganda, some of these pesticides will come even from Tanzania. And again, Lynn, I keep on saying that the Kenyan conditions are very different from the conditions even in UK and US. You know, in the course, I think this topic, I have an understanding of it, not just from a legal perspective, but even from a farming perspective, because I've been involved in farming myself during my formative ages. And you find when preparing some of these, when spraying, Kenyan farmers will prepare a concoction of it. They will add so many ingredients. Some of them even add salt when they're spraying glyphosate. They say that if you add salt, it becomes more effective. And if they find that your farm, you used this kind of chemical and it seems to work, they share that knowledge. It becomes now a shared scientific finding, a eureka moment for the entire village. So there is this one farmer who discovered that when you add salt to glyphosate, it becomes even more effective. So you find all farmers now adding glyphosate. Salt. So without knowing now that once you add, this is, there are scientists who've come up and prepared these ingredients. So it means when you add any more ingredient to this concoction, you alter the entire chemical formula of that ingredient. So now when you add, some of them will add salt, some of them will even add it with a number of other pesticides. And the reactions, sometimes some farmers will tell you that, hey, there was a time I tried this and this.
Yes.
It almost exploded. I saw fire. Because they mixed some chemicals, pesticides, which are exothermic, without knowing that there are some, you cannot be able to use them in multiple times. So what our farmers are using, you will never find one spraying any one single chemical. Like this one is just Evisect, and you find them just using Evisect. No, they will want to use Evisect. They'll add it with Bestox. They'll now go and add it with Oshoden, and then they have a concoction of their own. If you were to test that concoction and take it to a lab, it is something, you know, it lacks even an understanding. So why is PCPP when this is going on? PCPP will always go around these big farms. They'll go to Del Monte, they'll go to James Finley, but the Kenyan farmers who are the small scale farmers around the entire country, PCPP has no capacity to individually go and inspect or the kind of farming that is going on. And this is what I've been trying to push. And I really wish to see this happening. In 1960, during the colonial government, they used to have something they called extension officers. And extension officers used to go around villages in some white motorcycles.
Yes.
Most people who've been in villages will tell you those motorcycles were associated with GK, and especially associated with the agrovet and agronomists who used to go around these villages. And those extension officers were very fundamental in ensuring, in fact, by the way, in 1960, our agriculture was even more developed than it is today. I don't know why the colonial government agriculture. Did you know, Lynn, in 1940, Kenya was the highest producer of oranges? All this land you have here today, there is a library we have known as a Macmillan Library. Macmillan Library was built in honor of Lord Macmillan. It was built by Lady Macmillan in honor of Lord Macmillan. He used to own all this land that is now along Thika Road. So, or if you're living along Thika Road, you should know that in 1940 you would have been living in an orange farm all the way to Blue Post. And Kenya used to be the largest exporter of oranges because this is what Lord Macmillan used to farm. So I don't know, our agriculture then was so much developed because when most of these white settlers came in Kenya, they were not just farming recklessly. They were farming with the help of these extension officers. It's them who used to advise them that this soil is good for oranges. So you find Lord Macmillan doing oranges. Then you go and find Lord Delamere on the other hand doing coffee, because these agronomists will come and test the soil and tell him, here in Nakuru, you should do coffee. And tea. Then he goes elsewhere in Nanyuki and tells them, this soil of yours here, or this kind of grass is good for beef. So we arrest our Ministry of Agriculture. I don't know for what reasons. We no longer have these agronomists going around villages explaining to farmers on safe farming practices. And this is one of the things that our constitution envisions when it speaks of acceptable quality. Because if we have to have acceptable quality of food in our tables, we must entrench professionalism, we must entrench, we must give professionals, especially agronomists, a chance to work with farmers in their day-to-day activities, so that what lands to our table at the end of the day is safe. And we have so many young people who've been in school and have learned agriculture, who will be given responsibilities of going around our villages telling farmers, you know, once you spray this and this pesticide, you should not harvest until after 14 days. And if you're spraying these, you should not use more than 10 ml of this. Because another thing I've seen is, you'll find a certain farmer tries a certain pesticide and then it doesn't work. So the farmer thinks that maybe the reason why it did not work is because I used a very little quantity of volume. So the next time they add the volume. So if they use 10 ml today, tomorrow they'll use 20 ml or 30 ml. Forgetting now as they add this quantity, it becomes even more poisonous. It leads to more substrate remaining in our leaves. So we have to agree as a country and as a people. We've let our farmers down. We should return back agronomists such that they advise our farmers on their day-to-day use, especially of these chemicals. We should not allow a farmer to work in an agrovet just because he had a certain pesticide being advertised and be able to buy it.
Yeah.
You should only be able to buy it with prescription of an agronomist. And these agronomists can go around villages, they advise farmers. In fact, even on farming practices, most of the farming you find, even before you build your rural home, these agronomists are the ones who are advising you. They tell you that this land here is flat, is good for farming. Go and build on this hill. They find you farming, alongside the river, and they tells you, especially at the river, you farm through contours. And this brings me now to my next point. Most of these pesticides, even their disposal, and some of our farming, farmland continues to be very minimal. And so people have returned even to farming alongside rivers. So you'll find someone using glyphosate next to a river. And when it rains, it percolates. And once it percolates, it goes downstream now to the river.
Yeah.
If you do some tests to some of our water sources and drainage systems, you will be shocked at the level of substrate of these chemicals in our water. And even our insect, to go down to other ingredients, especially chlorophylls. One of the most affected, or one of the most fundamental, in the farming ecosystem, bees are the most fundamental part from our classic science. It's the cross-pollination. They account for over 90% of insect-pollinated flowers.
Yeah.
So bees are the most affected when it comes to the use of these pesticides. And these bees are the ones, again, that are very necessary for the pollination, again, of these flowers. So there was a time I tried, I've been doing something I called pollinator gardens. Pollinator gardens is where I reproduce bees and then I release them to the ecosystem. I'm not producing bees for the honey, just producing them for their work in pollination. So I culture so many bee colonies and then release them to the environment. And I was trying to see whether there can be a correlation between more bees doing more pollination and then more production. So as much as we've allowed the use of these pesticides, and then they harm the very bees that are necessary again for this pollination. So you will have very healthy crops. They've not, you've managed to deal with the aphids, but you've killed bees that will lead to the pollination of these flowers. So at the end of the day, your production will be low.
Yeah.
Because there hasn't been 100% pollination of the flowers. Yeah.
So as you talk, something just, came into my mind.
Yeah.
Do you think this is also by design, that the small farmers, the small scale farmers are not being given this information? Because look at it this way. I think there's a show we did. I think it was either in avocados or something. And we learned that majority of the exporters are the politicians of the Hass avocados and whatever are the politicians. But if you're going to export a Hass avocado in the UK, that means you have to meet the UK standards.
Correct.
So that means in your farm here, you are not going to use those chemicals.
Correct.
So even you as a politician, I cannot use this chemical in my farm because it will affect the export process. But then now, these small scale farmers, no one is giving them this information. Do you think it's by design so that they can prevent them even from going, just moving from one step to another?
Lynn, you've actually captured the entire circle, and as we began by saying, especially in the horticulture market, Kenya lost the UK horticulture market in 2013, especially of these French beans, because the chemicals they are using, they have been banned in UK.
Yes.
So for them, they'll sell you chemicals that they have been banned, and if you use these chemicals, they'll not allow. In fact, they charge you something they call a dumping fee.
What's a dumping fee?
A dumping fee is to mean that what you exported to them is garbage. So they have to charge you so that they can dispose of your garbage. So you are charged because you said you exported food, let me say, of unacceptable quality, or the UK standards as you put them. So we have farmers here, our Kenyan farmers, especially small scale farmers, who are actually the people who prepare our every day-to-day meal. What you say is very right. The avocados we have in Kakuzi are not for you and I. They are meant for the UK citizens, and they are prepared in very stringent measures so that they are of acceptable quality to the export market. The pineapples you see at Del Monte, they are not meant for you and I. And they are prepared again with standards so that they meet the export market. When you go again to even tea leaves, especially James Finley, again you find it's prepared in certain standards. Even our coffee, again, there's a standard set for the export market. And then there is another standard. I don't know why we classified ourselves as Kenyans so low that we only deserve what is of lower quality and prepared in, without any standards. But what we sell elsewhere
is of
higher standards. And now you find the Kenyan farmers, as you said, the small-scale farmers, they cannot access the lucrative market because one, they do not have that information, as you put it. So the only people who can access the lucrative export market are the large-scale farmers. And these are especially now, the bourgeoisies who can afford to have these export companies. So our small-scale farmers are left to provide food for you and I. And now they have no specific standards. They have no knowledge even on the use of these pesticides. They have no knowledge even on their own safety, or they have even no implement. So I would say I do not, what we speak here is common sense. It's not that this is not within the knowledge of our policymakers. This is something that is within the knowledge of my even former CS, who was the governor then, Munya. When you go to places like Meru, for instance, they've even resulted to using pesticides on Miraa, on Mogoka, and you'll find these Miraa and Mogoka will now be sold and is eaten raw. And you find someone sprayed Miraa today, tomorrow it's been sold, someone is chewing again the same Miraa without even knowing the kind of pesticides that were used. So we are poisoning our consumers. I'll keep on repeating these, and risking the lives of our small-scale farmers who are the providers, who provide us with food. I do not know why until today, disregarding all these provisions of our constitution on as the food of acceptable quality, even on honest advertisement, and the devolved function which now lies within county government. I don't see why the county government of Meru should not be having extension officers walking around the Miraa farms in Maua, advising farmers that you cannot use these pesticides on Miraa. I don't know why the county government of Munyeri cannot have extension officers going around the coffee farms and tea farms and telling farmers you cannot use malathion on these.
But can we really get agricultural officers, or do we gotta export the labor to Saudi Arabia?
We better export
the labor to Saudi Arabia.
That is the irony of it. We better export labor to Saudi Arabia. Some of the people we are exporting, you'll even find they have diplomas in agriculture. They will be better used by the Kenyan people, advising our farmers on these mundane topic we are speaking about. But they're in Saudi Arabia cleaning houses instead of advising our farmers.
Imagine the irony, right? The irony. But have you interacted with some of the farmers who are now facing challenges, and what are some of those experiences? How has that been like for you?
That has been very shocking, and it explains the energy within which you see me pursuing this. I have come across farmers who've suffered from Parkinsonism. Parkinsonism originates from paraquat, again, one of the chemicals we've listed. And paraquat, the worst about it is because it has no remedy. If you inject paraquat, it's not like other pesticides you'll be told, take milk, vomit. If you read most of those sachets for these pesticides, Lynn, you'll see the irony of it. They're telling a farmer that after you ingest these, what you should do is just take 2 fingers, put in your mouth, and vomit. So this farmer who's putting 2 fingers, even in the first place, has no gloves, even to begin with. So he'll even be poisoning himself more. Parkinsonism is so expensive to maintain that these farmers have stopped medication, because for 1 week prescription, it's about 8,000 shillings. So in a month, that is 32,000. And you find in the course of his employment, he was employed as a sprayer. So he was actively interacting with these pesticides. If he was in the US, have been compensated $2 billion, like John Barnes. But now, because in Kenya, without any access to information, in fact, this petition that I alluded on is the first case ever in Africa.
Really?
On these grounds, yeah.
Really?
Yeah. It's the first case we've tabled up. So he suffered from Parkinsonism, which is highly expensive even to maintain. He stopped medication. He used to be a sprayer, and now he's just home. He shakes uncontrollably. You may think that he's been drunk. And that is what the irony of... But so many patients we have, he's not the only one, by the way. So many people in the village who suffered from Parkinsonism, people make fun of them. Even looking at them at prima facie, you say, this person is an alcoholic addict.
Yeah.
So people will say it's because of alcohol, without knowing actually it's because of Parkinsonism, which is directly tied to paraquat.
Is it scientifically proven that it is tied to paraquat?
Correct. It's scientifically proven, and there have been cases in US brought again against manufacturers of paraquat on grounds of it causing Parkinsonism, and even court of law based on scientific evidence.
Yes.
I've come to this conclusion that there is a causation between the use of paraquat and Parkinsonism. And it's a condition that you'll find in so many people, especially from these agricultural, agrarian regions in our country. I've come across other patient of non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, same as which John Barnes suffered from, who again in their lifetime have acquired this disease from their occupation of farming and interacting with these pesticides. And there are so many. And I'm in the process of documenting, and I will even welcome your listeners.
Yes.
If anyone has been in the process of agriculture during the course of their life, and they have been interacting with these pesticides, and they've acquired some of these diseases, including Parkinsonism, including non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, they can get in touch with us, and we can document their cases.
Yes.
And we can also continue pushing for their justice as well.
Do we do an email for that?
Yeah,
how
definitely.
Can they
can send me an email through Kelvin Kubai advocate at gmail.com.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
All right. But let's go back now to the standards, the Bureau of Standards, etc.
Yeah.
So if they say that they trust the manufacturer, but they've seen that these things have been banned from even their countries of production, why can't they wait to get whatever it is they need to get right here before that product is sent to the market? What prevents them from holding it?
What you say, Lynn, alludes to a very key fundamental principle when it comes to environmental law, and it's known as the precautionary principle. The precautionary principle gives that if there is something, or there is no consensus within the scientific community on the effectiveness or the harm of a possible environmental harm, the best thing to do is precaution.
Yes.
Such that you prevent rather than cure.
Yes.
So even by the use of precautionary principle, what PCPB and KEBS should have been doing is saying that even though then we do not have capacity to test some of these pesticides, then by virtue of precaution, we will not allow them to circulate within the Kenyan market.
There you go. Easy, right?
Very easy.
Yeah.
It's just even a gazette notice, an issue of a gazette notice, and saying that by virtue of precaution, we advise our farmers not to use these and these pesticides, because in similar jurisdictions, they've been banned based on these and these grounds. So it's a policy issue. I don't know why we've to go to court to push them. And I appreciate, by the way, PCPB, because once we went to court, they actually withdrew some of the chemicals that we were asking the court to remove from market.
Really?
And and there was a time also Gladys Boss Sholei, to give credit where it's due, she was pushing for some of the removal of these pesticides even in parliament.
Yes.
So this conversation is not just a conversation for we lawyers, it's a conversation for the entire country, both from a personal perspective, from the parliamentary perspective, from collective perspective, even including county government. So you as an individual farmer, as we said about the precautionary principle, it is good to be cautious in the use of these pesticides. It is good to have this hygiene don't share these knapsacks.
Yeah.
Have your own implement to protect you for your own safety. And I don't know, some of our farmers, by the way, they've begun to realize that there is an effect in these farms. When you walk to some farms, you'll find that they have a separate kitchen garden where they're planting their onions, and they do it organically. Then now they have elsewhere where they are farming anything else that goes to the market. Because they're beginning to see that
something is
off.
But then you see the irony is, even if you separate the gardens, air, either way is whatever is here can easily reach there, whether you spray or not,
Especially the bees. Bees will come from these flowers that you've sprayed today with dimediate. And they'll go and pollinate your own kitchen garden here that you've organically farmed. So you're not safe. You're not secure. Until everyone is safe, no one is safe. Until our farmers are secure and understand and they have this knowledge. Even we sitting here today, even our members of parliament who are very reluctant to even issue bans, even those on the regulatory side at PCPB, they're also not safe. Wow. They are immediate family.
Soko tutakutana si wote.
Soko ni yetu wote.
Soko tuko ndani sisi wote.
Exactly. So and science doesn't care. Science is not democratic. It's not about whether you agree with us or not. At the end of the day, science is science. So if this is harmful to the environment and human life, there is nothing that will negate it. No amount of debate will negate the fact that it is harmful. Good. So whether you agree with us or not, you are candidates.
Yes, because even if you don't lose your life, you have nephews, nieces, brothers, sisters.
The shocking thing, Lynn, is, especially from where I come from, Mount Kenya region, you will find that in every family, especially the extended family, someone knows someone who's a candidate of cancer. And most of these diseases, they have been acquired as a result of their activities. And so no one is safe until we are all safe.
We are all safe.
And for the safety of and the health of our Kenyan people, we have to ensure that what comes to our dinner table is safe.
Okay, but I know you spoke briefly about the GMO, but I also saw a correlation here, because if you have the GMO seeds, of course, which we are also importing, they come with their own pesticides. What does that do now to the indigenous seeds and also the soil, our soil? What does that do?
You've brought a very interesting topic, which I was discussing with my friends and some other lawyers, especially on these indigenous seeds. We have a bill that seeks to protect indigenous seeds, but everything else in that bill has nothing to do with protection of indigenous seeds, but everything to do with protection of GMO seeds. To an extent now that we've erased our everything indigenous about our seeds, because indigenous seeds can only be farmed as we used to do indigenously. So if you have an indigenous seed, you have, for instance, dengu or jahe, to protect the authenticity of that seed, you can only continue producing it as we used to be. Because if you've bees cross-pollinating this indigenous seed with or even you're spraying these synthetic pesticides to these indigenous seed. Some of these pesticides, by the way, even alter the quantity and makeup of these crops that we, or the end seed of these crops. So we've destroyed everything to do with our indigenous seeds. We are not protecting them as this bill seeks to do. And not just this bill, even our constitution speaks about the protection of our culture, of our heritage, especially on Article 11, and our indigenous seeds. And as we said, there's a tendency to think that we were not farmers. We just became farmers the other day with the coming of colonialism. We used to farm for thousands of years. In fact, if you read the history of ancient Egypt and Kemet, you'll find that River Nile was the highest producer. Even when in the Bible you read the book of Exodus, when there was hunger in the Middle East, they came to Egypt to look for food. The story of the migration of the Jews when they were held hostage in Egypt. Actually, they had gone to Egypt to look for food. So we began farming way longer. Yeah, so this point of assuming that without these Western ways of farming, we cannot be food secure
That's a lie.
is a lie, is a fallacy. We must look at how we used to produce these seeds individually. Growing up, my grandmother's hut, there used to be some maize farms, some cobs which were hanged from the hut.
Oh man,
Yeah,
yes.
and you know, while she's cooking and there's smoke, these seeds hanging from there would actually, you know, there's a seed dormancy.
Yeah.
So when these seeds are hanging from the hut, the temperatures from the kitchen helps to break the seed dormancy. So when they, at the onset of rains, when she plants these seeds, they actually germinate very quickly because the seed dormancy has already been broken down. So they didn't, we may think that because they didn't explain what they were doing scientifically with these scientific terms we are using now, we may think they were stupid.
Yeah.
But they are their own way. They knew why they were doing that. When it comes to like these maize, they used to take some ash. There was some special ash, and then they mix this ash with the maize in the granary, and you find that maize will stay even for 10 years.
Yeah.
In fact, one thing I loved about I love about our traditional agriculture farming is there used to be a granary in almost every compound, and this granary used to provide food. You may find people are eating food even not for this season.
Yeah.
It's food that was planted like 5 seasons ago.
Yes.
So these people are food secure. But look at us today. How secure are we with all these advanced farming?
I don't even know the last time I saw a granary. I can't remember.
You can't remember the last time you saw a granary?
Yes.
Some of these things we are grappling with, our farmers here complaining of cutworms. They used to spray even tobacco. These things we are complaining of aphids. They used to mix these with tobacco, and then they mix with pyrethrum, and then they also mix with chili.
Chili.
Yeah, you know, I hear that aphids do not eat chili, so they used to intertwine them together, and they used to, you know, farm in their own way and their own reason and provide food for their families for the entire generations. So it's a fallacy to let these multinationals determine how the food lands on our table. Right from the seed, they give you the seed, a GMO, they give you the pesticide. Until these food lands to your table, you as a farmer, you as a consumer has no control. And then for them, they start putting measures and saying that for us, you cannot export to us this. So we are harming ourselves. By us not instituting these mechanisms and instituting these policy changes, we're harming our economy. We cannot access lucrative market. You know, actually, Lynn, in UK now, if you want to buy something organic, it is almost 100 times more expensive than the synthetic one. You cannot afford, they have, you know, a shelf here, you'll find they're saying these are organic, grown tomatoes, which you cannot afford the cost of them because they understand that what these synthetically ones farmed, they're not authentic. So they have a price. So it's an issue of even price, such that now they have cut off another market here, lucrative market for what is organically farmed. At the same time, you know, letting us here grapple with these synthetic ones. Yeah.
But quite interesting. And I think, so the pesticide, so if this is a GMO sector and I spray the pesticide, it's going to, if those are indigenous crops, it's going to affect them completely.
Yeah, correct. You know, it changes the genetic makeup of it from now, from us saying they are, you know, organic seeds or they are these traditional seeds. So when you have this cross-pollination between these modern seeds and these our traditional seeds here, definitely what comes or results from there has been organically interfered with. It's no longer of the same genetic makeup as that which was initially there. And we've, you know, most of the crops or seeds that our grandparents and forefathers used, there was a protection of seeds. I mean, there could come any kind of hunger, but there were seeds that no one ate. And they were not even stored in the normal granary. They used to be in special places, like now hanging in a hut. So they knew those are seeds, and they were protected. Because now these seeds, there may come hunger and granaries are empty, but no one will dare eat what is meant for the seeds. So right now we do have no culture for the seeds. In fact, we always rely now on these seeds from like the seed board. Every season we have to go and buy these seeds. Some of these seeds now they've introduced GMOs, and I've seen the Court of Appeal the other day. They did also allow the use of some of these GMOs. I mean, so our Kenyan farmers are not safe.
Yeah.
And if the Kenyan farmers are not safe, the Kenyan consumers
are not safe either.
Because it's one chain. And you cannot break any one aspect of this chain
without the other.
Because one is reliant on the other. Yeah.
So where do we go from here when you put out this, class action suit, etc.? Did they reply? What are they saying? They know, yes, their products are causing harm here.
Made responses. They go and get the best creme de la creme lawyers, and they file voluminous defenses saying that the conditions, especially in Kenya, allow some of the use of these chemicals, and because without these chemicals we cannot be food secure as a country, so we continue allowing them, so on and so forth. So when I look at these responses and claims, I do not find them weighty, because some of these things you cannot leave vulnerable farmers without giving them the necessary knowledge as enshrined in our constitution on Article 46 on the right to information, and also on this socio-economic right of ensuring food is of acceptable quality. So we should not compromise on what the constitution provides about food of acceptable quality in the name of our conditions here are allowing, and so on and so forth. Then if they changed policy and put in measures and mechanisms, if our county government were able to offer even these extension services to our farmers, I believe we could be able to, it could be a win-win situation for everyone. And we will not be burdening our healthcare. So in the process of meeting these farmers and some of them who've acquired these diseases, you may really get to see the weight or the mess we are in as a country as far as our agriculture is concerned. And how, as far as food security and food safety is concerned. To the extent sometimes I'm even afraid to go and buy tomatoes in the evening, because how am I sure? Or do I even know where these tomatoes were farmed? But if we put these measures in place, you as a farmer, Lynn, you will be assured that wherever you go and buy tomatoes, just as the UK consumer is assured. For the UK consumers, they don't care. They only know that our systems and mechanisms have been put in place to ensure that what comes to our table is food secure and of acceptable quality. But that is not the position with normal other Kenyan consumers. So there is need to, even if it means copy-pasting what we see in the UK and US into our systems. In any case, for Kenya, we should even double the standards, because our farmers are not in the same level, or they do not have the same capacity as the UK and US farmers.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Do you think there's hope?
Well, there is hope. I think it's a very, very daunting task, and individually I may not be able to do it, but collectively, Lynn, with a platform like yours, and it begins a journey of a step-by-step. If one farmer today learns something today and changes, even for his own safety, then we are better off, because that farmer is feeding 1,000 other people. Like, you may never know as a farmer what I'm planting today, who will eat it. So there are thousands of other people who are relying on your efforts today as a farmer. So if only one farmer
can do the right thing, then we've thousands of consumers who've gotten food of acceptable quality in their dinner table. And if our parliament and our regulators like PCPB did the right thing, then overall as a country, we will be in the same level as the UK. I've seen countries trying, like Rwanda, they are really trying. I've seen this conversation begin in Uganda. So across Africa. And we'll also give room for our own science, because there are other alternatives, especially in biopesticides.
there are other alternatives, but
Yes.
the more we continue giving room to these synthetic pesticides, we are denying a chance for these other safer alternatives to be developed. As we always say, necessity is the mother of invention.
Yes.
But if there is no this necessity, there is continued reliance on synthetic pesticides, which are causing more harm than good, then we'll continue relying on them without improving or providing for safer alternatives.
Yeah, maybe that's what they want, for us to continue relying on them. You never know, Kubai.
They've always said that they've always said that we are overpopulated.
Yes.
You know, so many times, few people know actually a country like UK is the size of Rift Valley province added to Western province. If you add Rift Valley plus Western, that is the entire United Kingdom. And the United Kingdom population is same as Kenya's population. I think we are all now at 65 million. So if we have 65 million living in the size of Rift Valley and Western, and they are food secure, so why should someone else convince us otherwise that we, Kenya, with all these land mass, and 3 times the land as UK, we cannot be food secure?
Good.
Yeah.
But I blame also our policymakers.
Yes.
If people decide nothing of low standards, of nothing poisonous gets inside the country, it ends at that.
Correct.
But the fact that we are in this era of corrupt leaders, not leaders, corrupt politicians, that explains it. It just needs one person to say, this does not meet the standards of my people.
Correct. Yeah, you are right, Lynn. And I think I'm happy of this class consciousness that Kenyan people are starting to appreciate. Beautiful. And they are learning every day.
Yeah.
People like you, Lynn, are doing a good work of helping them unlearn, relearn, and they're continuing to the consciousness is rising. And I also welcome so many young people back to farming. You know, sometimes we've left only the old people and they're doing things as just the old way they know. They don't even care much about their health.
Yes.
And I believe if we come in and we bring also this knowledge to them, of course, and also professionals coming in, these agronomists now being actively involved in the day-to-day farming activities, then as a country, I think we may be able even to reclaim this lucrative export market that we missed.
Beautiful. But then again, to appreciate people like you, it's an honor to have people like you in our country. Change begins with us. I think for me, the sad realization is, maybe not a sad one, but the realization is, if we don't start these conversations, no one else will.
You are, I can't agree anymore. Change has to begin with us. We have to change and revolutionize our agriculture.
Good.
Because it's the only way we can even secure the safety of our children tomorrow.
And there's no food security without food safety.
Absolutely. You nailed it.
Yeah, thank you so much, Kubai.
Most
An
welcome,
honor
Lynn.
to have you again for another episode.
Yes.
But I know you gave us your email address, but if people want to connect with you, how else can they do that? And if you have a parting shot also, feel free.
My appreciation to our listeners, and my most sincere appreciation to you, Lynn, and the team here.
Thank you
for even hosting me on, giving me another platform. I don't take it lightly. And thank you so much to our listeners for your time, and for that one farmer and that one Kenyan consumer. This is a chain that requires us all to be able to, provide safe food of acceptable quality to the Kenyan consumers. You may find me on X. I'm always very active.
Yes.
And I'll always appreciate connecting with you and even debating and sharing more ideas with you.
Okay.
And especially to policy makers and doctors. I'm actually inviting so many doctors in the process of documenting these cases of these patients who've acquired diseases as a result of this. So if there are doctors and who would want to work with us to document these cases, to make even more better policy changes and to understand the overall gross effect of the harm these pesticides have done to our country, we'd really welcome you on board. Reach us again through the same email, or even reach me through X, and we shall be able to connect and work together.
Great.
Asante.
Shukran sana. Let me
Asante.
let you go. I know you learned friends. You are always busy. But again, thank you for just stopping by. And guys at home, you know, for me, your take home is very important. I want also you to tell me on the comment section, have you experienced this? Because I think for me, the saddest part is knowing that we have so many people. I saw a post on X and someone said there is a specific bus from Meru that lives with patients all the way to Kenyatta National Hospital, because all of them have one thing in common. They are going through cancer. And to hear that some of these cases can be, you know, some of these cases are from some of the agriculture practices that we are doing and the chemicals that we are using, really breaks my heart. So let me know on the comment section. And also, if your family member has experienced this, there's an email address here. The Kubai's email address is right here. Share a brief with him or connect with him on X, because when many people come out, then I believe we are going to have a strong case. And always remember, when we lose our fear, they lose their power, period. Okay, so thank you so much for tuning in. Let me know once again what your take home has been. A special shout out to our partners of today's conversation, that's Kings Developers Limited. Go check out the apartments they have with them. And sometimes I know we are looking for an apartment to make a home, but also you can look at the investment opportunities that are, you know, with owning an apartment, you can put up an Airbnb, etc., etc. So check them out, and I can't wait to see their new projects or what they have for us this year. While you are at it, also check out our people at Golden Dreams Land and Properties Limited. Kama unataka kujishikia kashamba, these are my people of choice, and they've said their title deed is their DNA. It was a joy working with them through their properties here in Kenya. Our trip to Malindi, our trip to Matu, great properties also in Masinga and Makutano, and you can also talk to them about their flexible payment plans. Mjione barabara pia kuna maji, anything. And if you have a question on it, I've always said my email is open, info@lnn.digital. Ask me those questions and I'll be able to answer when I can. I'll see you guys tomorrow, 10 a.m. or 7 p.m. It's been amazing having this conversation, and I hope we have learned, and we continue relearning one story at a time. Bye-bye.
Golden Dreams Land and Properties Limited, the leading real estate company in title deed issuance, welcomes you to Malindi Precious Gardens Phase 3, just 30 minutes from Marereni, and 50 by 100 plots are going for 199,000 shillings, and 100 by 100 plots are 350,000 shillings, and it's perfect for building cottages. We also have Matu Baraka Gardens Phase 3, just 5 minutes from Matu town, touching Kivandini Masinga bypass, offering 50 by 100 plots for 399,000 shillings. All plots are close to social amenities with 98% neighborhood development, and prices are inclusive of title deed. Book your site visit now by calling 0726 004455 or 0718 004455. Golden Dreams Land and Properties Limited. Title deed is our DNA.